Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the View from the Clipper podcast. I'm Josh Sexton, slipping into the hosting chair today, just easing ourselves back into the new year. James decided that for this one, he just wants to let me drive. So the Clippers are back in the driving seat. I'm in the driving seat for today's podcast, and I do, as always, have James Warner from Clippers UK with me. James, how have you been, man?
I've been good. I've been good. It's been a long break. It's been a while since we last chopped it up. I don't know if I'm superstitious, Josh, but I think as any listeners or any of the viewers will be aware, I think the Clippers were 6-20 the last time we spoke, and I've been hosting most of these. So I'm hoping you stepping into the seat today will maintain this good form that the Clippers have miraculously found when we have decided to take a break from the podcast. So um, yeah, happy for you to keep driving this for today's podcast and hope the Clippers keep driving forward with their win streak because it's been absolutely insane since we last spoke.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the hottest teams in the NBA for basically the entirety of that time. Tyler obviously, set the I guess record or whatever he like threw the gauntlet down to his players, and it's fair to say they've absolutely risen to the challenge. And I have to give the Clippers credit because I remember last time we spoke on the podcast, I was kind of saying like unless something drastically changes, and whether that's roster changes or coaching staff changes, then I don't see a way in which the Clippers turn it around. And we were talking about the return of Derrick Jones Jr. and how the Clippers were hanging the hat on that. And it basically seems that Derrick Jones Jr. came back for a bit. Actually, they started winning games before he even came back. He got injured. Same play, same game against the Boston Celtics once again, which was, a huge blow, but the Clippers managed to even ride that out. So yeah, the thing that Ty said was 35 and 20 as the goal for the rest of the season. And I saw Justin Russo tweeted the other day. So this was after the Wizards game, I think. But then obviously the Clippers lost to the Chicago Bulls last night, second night of a back-to-back with travel as well. So happy to give them the benefit of the doubt there. But Justin Russo said, so from this point onwards, the Clippers will have to go 23 and 17 the rest of the way to hit Tyronn Lue's goal, which I'm not going to lie, James, it feels very doable. And as I say, like that mindset flipped from the point that we were at where we were basically like done with this team. We wanted to see big trades and maybe even some coaching staff changes to say that like I'm sat here now and I actually kind of expect that the Clippers probably will go at least 23 and 17 to see out the rest of the season. That's kind of crazy, really.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd get to this position, Josh, like where we where we left off before Christmas. It was doom and gloom. The Clippers were just trending downwards and the conversations about lottery picks and trading away stars was just growing and growing. So I think, I think we had mentioned, I distinctly remember, I don't know if it was the last episode or definitely one of the most previous episodes. I think we always maintained that this kind of run was always possible for the Clippers because we've seen it before and we've seen it during this period of the season where like a bad run starts the season and then things just start to click for the team. And I think that's what's happened, particularly over like the last 15 games. And I'm looking back now and it does look like that sort of Lakers win. I think it was 15 point win against the Lakers was kind of that catalyst for the streak, really. And that was back in the 21st of December. I think coincidentally, just after we'd released our podcast, the team have decided to put on a run like this. And I saw some people saying that the teams that they've been playing have been pretty mediocre. Like, yes, the Clippers have played two games against the Wizards recently. They played the Hornets, Nets, Jazz. But there's still some good teams in there. There's some good wins that the Clippers have picked up along the way. And teams like the Knicks, Raptors, Lakers, like I mentioned, Pistons, like good Eastern teams that the Clippers have managed to get themselves over. Even the Rockets, who you think now with Ty Lue's goals of trying to win that amount of games, they're only 8 games behind the Houston Rockets right now. And I think before we were saying, oh, let's catch up with the Memphis Grizzlies. Well, they've done that now. I think they've got to keep setting their sights higher and higher in the table because it's clearly a talented team, which I think we always believed in. That clearly things weren't clicking for the team. Personnel wasn't right, but I'm not ready even now to say that the team have figured it out. I don't think any amount of wins will allow me to do that anymore with just being a Clippers fan and Clippers enjoyer. But yeah, I think clearly things are going well, and I just hope that continues. Um, yeah, I don't know what you think about the future in terms of like the next, I guess, 10, 15 games. Can they repeat that?
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll
it,
see.
you'd kind of like to think so. I guess the one sort of variable within all of this is Kawhi's health. Obviously, there's the Kawhi injury again that he got sent home
Yeah,
from the road trip for, and that like even just that sentence gives me like this like dark feeling inside my body because we've
yeah,
been here so many times before, me and you, James, and I can't even like comprehend how many times I'll have said that on the podcast that basically everything here is contingent on Kawhi's health. But it's just the way it is, unfortunately. Like we know exactly what we're going to get with Kawhi Leonard,
yeah.
and we were basically getting like a career year and a virtuoso year from that point that we mentioned of like the 18th of December is the last time that we recorded, just for a bit of extra context to the listener there, because I think you mentioned the date that the Lakers played. We recorded a couple of days before that. So to be
Mhm.
like to for the Clippers to have been as bad as they were on that day and for us to have been, basically saying we'd be happy to trade away Kawhi, maybe to just see something different, see something that does look towards the future. The fact that I'm sat here now and like don't feel too bad about the short-term future, but like also not feeling too bad about the short-term future makes you just feel better about the long-term future too. And like we've obviously saluted Kobe Sanders a couple of times on the podcast already this season. I was starting to get a bit down on Jordan Miller, to be honest, and like the opportunities that he was getting and wonder whether he was going to be like even just a passable NBA player. And yeah, he's really rose to the occasion, particularly over the past few weeks. And those first couple of games without Kawhi, especially, he looked like he was almost the second in command behind James Harden in some of those
Yeah,
games. So you kind of get in the score and output that you think should be there for the potential that Jordan Miller has got. And I was just looking at them because I kind of wanted to like drill a little bit further down into the stats just in terms of like how good the Clippers are at the moment. So I put into NBA.com, and I don't know if this is like the foolproof way to do it. So um, I put where the Clippers have been from date from, so 18th of December, because that's the last time we recorded. And then I started a new tab and put date two. So the date two, 27 games, the Clippers were 6 and 21. So I presume that will include the game that was on the 18th of December. And then I presume if I've done date from, it won't include
hmm,
the game that day. But 26th worst team in the league through those first 27 games. The sort of efficiency numbers didn't look all that bad, like 47% from the field on 84 attempts a
yeah,
night, 35% from three on roughly 36 attempts a night, 83% from free throws. And then since that 18th of December cut off, the Clippers are 13 and 4, best team in the NBA, as I mentioned before. Probably they've played one less game than the Phoenix Suns, so the Phoenix Suns may well be hotter when it gets to the actual 18 game mark. The Clippers need to hit to play the same amount of games. Phoenix Suns are 13 and 5, so it might be joined to that point. But I mentioned some of those numbers before. The Clippers' field goal attempts have jumped. They've just started putting up more shots, so they've gone from about 84 shots a game to more like. Oh no, sorry, fallen actually. I was looking at the Phoenix Suns and they've fallen, which is interesting, from 84 to about 81. But they've got more efficient on those attempts, just slightly by a percentage. Um, they have taken just a slight leap in 3-point attempts, but a big leap in efficiency. They've gone up about 3% in terms of efficiency to 38% from three, and then the free throws have stayed just about roughly the same in terms of percentage and attempts. So, like, no sort
yeah,
of obvious thing in terms of like I remember saying at the time like the Clippers just don't get enough shots. It's interesting that actually like that number fell over this period. Really, I guess like the main thing you'd lean on from that point of view, James, like what I guess we could all see that the eye test tells us, but then the stats confirm it. It's always why like I go back to look at the stats. I'm like I've seen what I've seen with my eyes, but you can't do need the stats to back it up. Is that basically this has just
yeah,
been like the stars really coming out to play and guys being happy to see to the stars for the most part. I think the Clippers assist numbers have even fallen that time. I'm just trying to like verify that 'cause I'm flicking between two tabs. The Clippers assist numbers have literally fallen from the point of when they were one of the worst teams in the league to now being the best team in the league over that last 17 games. And that basically suggests that
yeah.
the two guys that we were saying you two need to like drag this team to wins have basically arrived at the party and started doing that. And obviously Kawhi Leonard has been right at the top of that.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned there about the underlying numbers for scoring, I think that before the Clippers put on the streak was good. Like there was always the potential there if they really drew into that efficiency, they could start to see wins. And I think they've definitely made more of an effort on the defensive side,
For sure.
even creating more opportunities in games. I've taken a few, I guess, snapshots of the data over time just through the sort of data visualizations that I've posted on X, or formerly known as Twitter, over at Clippers UK. A few of those like polar charts. So I've looked back at a few of those actually, and they do correspond with what you're saying there, what you're seeing on NBA.com. There's a few interesting things just from comparing like two of the polars that I've pulled together. One's from when the team was 6-18. So I think your view is three more losses there, but the offensive rating since then has gone up 3 points. So offensively, team scoring more, creating more opportunities. But I think more importantly, defensive rating has also gone down as well, which is great because it means there's more of an effort on the defensive side. And obviously, it's not the same defensive team as it was last year, but that effort has come back over those games, over the what was it 19 games since then. The team got considerably better on the defensive end. I think one of the worrying things was the opponent 3-point percentage. I think the Clippers were, I think, on the receiving end of 40% from three when the opponents were shooting, which is not good. That has dropped to 36.8 since that point. So yeah, team are just putting in more effort, and I think the eye test proves that as well. Like you don't just need the stats to see that. Like I can what if watching a few games, you can see there's definite increase in the defensive intensity, and having guys like Derrick Jones Jr. back, who I think was missed for a big stretch when the Clippers were losing a lot of games, and having him play more consistently, Chris Dunn and others. Obviously, the Clippers have been without players through even the winning stretch. The loss of Ivica Zubac for a period of time. Brook Lopez came in, who maybe hadn't had the best of starts, but I think really came into his own. Even minutes for Yannick Konan-Niedhaus as well, who managed to produce on the few occasions that he's been called upon, which I don't think the Clippers have had a rookie big who they've drafted be able to come in and immediately input, albeit not input on a consistent basis, but when he's been given heavy minutes, has come big on the defensive end, but also on the offensive side as well. So I think that next man up mentality that the Clippers have had over previous seasons, successful seasons, is really starting to show, where it wasn't really here. I don't think we were really seeing that. The Clippers had a really deep team to start the year, but no matter what lineups were thrown out, it was just consistently bad. But now it just feels like that next man up. And I love the point about Jordan Miller, because I think we received a question on one of the previous pods around if Jordan Miller can average around, I think it was 15, 16 over the last 5 games, averaging 14.4 points. So he's really stepped up, and I think we all thought that he could. I think he just needs that consistent game time, and I think fortunately enough with Kawhi out, he's become that option and that scoring option, and he's taking on that responsibility and that load, and just proving that if you marry the efficiency that he has with minutes and opportunity, like he can produce. I think, albeit like a couple of those games were against the Wizards, but like still we need to win those games. Like the Clippers can easily drop games like that. It can easily happen in the NBA, and yeah, just I think it's exciting to have these young players and these young players produce, because all the fans have known for ages that they could do it. And I think Kobe Sanders was the first to really step out and shine a light on the rookies and what they can do. And obviously he's been fantastic and has played heavy minutes so far this year. I don't think any of the stats particularly jump out, but I think he's just reliable, just efficient. Like reminds me very much of Nico Batum, and that's not to say he'll become Nico Batum or anything like that, but just produces when called upon, just reliable, steady, can score, can move the ball, is playable. Like, and that's all. I think that's all the Clippers really need, just playable young guys, and I think they finally got that. And fortunately enough, like other than Jordan Miller, like they've been available, and that's the key thing as well. when in particular guys like Kawhi obviously is out at the moment, and it is that knee injury, and that worry does come back, and we can talk about that a bit more, Josh. But I heard that he might be reevaluated today,
Yes,
but
they got
there's
back from the
no
road trip. Yeah.
timeline, so I guess we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like, obviously, fingers crossed that he is back for that Lakers game because that's another one. Like you marked that the first one was kind of like an important, like where you could put your flag in the sand now as being like, oh yeah, that was the turning point for
Yeah,
the Clippers season, and like the Clippers just did improve from that game. So you'd like to think that this could be like the sort of next touch point to be like, oh well, yeah, the Clippers are now just basically a better team than the Lakers potentially because the Lakers have been accused of being in a false position all season. Their point differential is dreadful basically when you weigh it up against the competition that they've had in terms of the rest of the top seven, if you want to call it that, in the West. Just basically every team above the Golden State Warriors. But even Golden State were better in recent weeks until that obviously, unfortunately timed injury to Jimmy Butler. But again, like, being ruthless as a Clippers fan, it presents opportunity to the Clippers in that the Warriors may now be a team that doesn't find a way to win as many games unless there's some sort of big splash to come from a Jonathan Kuminga trade that gets him something that replicates what Jimmy Butler was able to do in terms of that secondary star output, and of course improves on the output they get from Jonathan Kuminga, which besides the last few games where Jimmy Butler's been out is generally nothing because he doesn't play. It'd just be interesting to see. Like, it feels like the moment is now for the Clippers to, really sort of put the foot on the throat of those other teams around them. And Portland, their pick is protected 1 through 14, so they've got incentive to tank. Memphis own their own first round pick,
yeah,
so in a way they've got incentive to tank as long as they think that core of their team is, kind of without Ja Morant, and there's more of a sort of longer term future in that. And the Clippers don't have that incentive. The Clippers need to be a winning basketball team and quite
yeah.
handsomely a winning basketball team as well, so that OKC don't get a good pick there for the sake of everybody in the league. But there's a couple of things that I want to sort of touch on there from your point, James, just in a general sense, really, because you mentioned some of the rating things like the offensive rating and the defensive rating. And I was digging a little bit deeper into the defensive numbers because sometimes with the defensive numbers, it feels like that is the thing that like really relies on the eye test.
Yeah.
And like when you dig into the defensive numbers with the Clippers, like nothing has overly changed. And that's one of the like strange quirks of the Clippers, really, is that like everything you can see from the eye test suggests they're a way better basketball team than they were at the start of the season. It looks like they've locked in more
Mm.
defensively. It looks like, Kawhi and James have really come to the party, in particular in the past few sort of weeks, especially since we last recorded. But like you dig into the numbers of it, and like there's no big leap really in terms of any of the numbers. The ratings have had a swing. Like the Clippers have gone from a net rating of, I think it was about -6 when we last recorded, to like +6 roughly now, or like sort of in ballpark of that. So that's took a complete swing from one end to the other, and that suggests there's been more defensive buy-in. But besides that, like the Clippers have took the biggest jump in like blocks. So maybe you'd say like they just protect the paint better, or they found ways to kind of keep teams away in that sort of sense. But otherwise, like there's not really been a big jump in many stats. And I think that's like one of the strange quirks of this team is that I think we'd been kind of trying to say, particularly when the season started and things were going badly. I remember me and you recording a show where we were like, oh, we're not pulling the panic button on the Clippers yet because like they've been this bad before to start seasons. And I think I was even saying that before the season started because I was like, if they start badly, don't be alarmed. Like generally when this team looks a bit old and has that kind of narrative coming into the season, it does start a little bit badly, but like a bad start just went completely AWOL in terms of like how bad it could be. Like to get to the point where we were 6-21 was, like borderline disgraceful, to be honest. Um,
Yeah.
and yet, like it basically just seems like there has been more buy-in since then, and that points to a mentality switch. And we've spoke about the mentality a couple of times, and things that happen coming into the season, of course, with the Kawhi aspiration stuff, and I mean, a couple more things that have happened over the course of the season, really, like with Chris Paul and even Jeff
Yeah.
Van Gundy's sort of role and situation in that. And like you look at the vibes around the team now, like the mentality in the locker room, like I mean, literally to the point of like if you want to do direct comparison from Jeff Van Gundy while all the Chris Paul stuff was going on to like them celebrating in the locker room with Jeff Van Gundy after his birthday the other day. Everything you're hearing about like that training camp and the training camp they were able to have around the time of the NBA Cup. and players basically saying that it was Jeff Van Gundy that started to set up the defensive schemes and basically helped the Clippers,
Mhm.
get this turnaround. I mean, for one, it sort of says to me, and Drew made this point on my podcast. Drew Lasker made this point on the podcast with him, the crossover the pond podcast, that basically he thinks the biggest difference these days is that teams don't have enough training
Yeah.
camps. Like the NBA teams have always played 82 games, but there's not enough training camps these days, and teams don't take training seriously enough. And it basically feels like
Yeah.
Drew was maybe right in the case of the Clippers, because the Clippers had one training camp, it completely turned things around. They got mental buy-in, and their mentality since then has been like rock solid.
Yeah. And like I said, we can dig into those numbers in more detail, but I think there's just a lot of factors. I think the main factor is that the personnel hasn't changed really. You're just getting that buy-in. I think like his limitations are going to maintain. Like I wasn't expecting the defensive numbers to jump off the board, but I think a few metrics that you can show that buy-in, like you're saying, is like opponent 3-point percentage, like I said, dropping means that there's just that more attention to detail when it comes to like closeouts, and that's something you can see with the eye test far more. But I think there's definitely been like that uptick in the offensive side and just scoring the ball, but also like closing out games. And I think in the last pod mentioned around like how poor the team have been in the fourth quarter, and I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but I've just been looking over like the last, I think, six or nine games. Like the Clippers have gone from like bottom in terms of fourth quarter points to like top 10, and that just again shows that there's that desire to close out games. And I think we were finding a lot of times, even in games the Clippers were performing well, that they end up dropping because they'll just go so quiet in the fourth that games can just slip away. Like that is the NBA. The games can flip on their head based on fourth quarter performances. So I think that effort to see out the game married in with that defensive effort just again shows that there is that buy-in to really start winning, and that winning culture is that defensive intensity, but also the desire to play for every possession, no matter what quarter it's in, no matter how many points you are ahead, and not letting that that nature to maybe slow down because you're 20 points ahead and you can chill out a bit. No, like the NBA is not like that. This is it's a 3-point game now. Like teams can pull back in like five possessions. So yeah, I think that attention to detail has been evidenced, particularly over the last few games, and I think long may that continue. And I think maybe, like you said, like this is probably the part of the season where players do just start to buy in a bit more, and once they've got more games under their belt as well, like I think there's a big difference between like starting a season after like a bit of preseason and training camp to then actually starting the season and getting in the rhythm as well. And I think sometimes it can just like take time, particularly when a team's got, like, as I mentioned, like so many new players and older players, like Brook Lopez and others who have joined, even like John Collins, who's been asked to, I think, play a slightly different role than he has previously in his career. And I think that's been evidenced by like how he's been performing recently and his slow start. I don't want to pin things too much on Chris Paul because I know you had mentioned it there, but I did think it was important to bring up, and I do want to gauge your thoughts on this, Josh, because it's factual that the Clippers are 14-7 since they decided to send CP3 home, and I know we all reacted in a big way, and I still firmly believe like that was the way that the team handled it was completely wrong, and it was disrespectful to a legend. But I don't know if there's more weight to his presence on the team now. I can't say there's a clear correlation there. It's probably more coincidence than anything else, but clearly the team have been performing better since he's been away. And again, I'm not suggesting that there is that clear causation there, but I think it's an interesting point, and it's something that I've seen a lot on Clippers Twitter today. I don't want to be dunking on CB3 because again, legend. I don't think he should have been sent home. Poorly handled by the Clippers, but was there something in that? I don't know. Again, it could just be like there was maybe like a percentage that the Clippers had pulled out of pulling him home. Maybe he wasn't great for the culture. There's obviously a whole lot of things that the Clippers have done besides just sending Chris Paul home. But I thought it was interesting, and I've seen it a lot on Twitter over the last few days.
Yeah, I think it is like, something to assess really because, the Clippers clearly thought it was is something to assess and I'm with you. Like I'm still not happy in the way that it all happened. I'm not happy in terms of like the PR that it brought to the Clippers at a time when like the Clippers PR and reputation among, other NBA fans, but the media in general at the time was like in the bin because of all the aspiration stuff and because of the bad start to the season. And it just felt like, like you couldn't do any more to like add fuel to that fire than send a guy whose like jersey was surely going to go up in the rafters, like a Clippers legend, and send him home. And yet, like, I mean, like if you were sat here with Lawrence Frank now and he was saying, we just thought CP was bad for the culture and we think the culture has been way better since CP was sent home, you'd kind of not be able to argue with it because the evidence, while it doesn't like, as you say, you don't know whether it's just causation or correlation really, and I would probably argue it's more correlation. But like you couldn't sit there and like on the base of the evidence completely disprove that Lawrence Frank was wrong because CP is still without a team, so there's no one around the league that's decided that CP is like worth trading for or picking up yet, and that may change for the trade deadline. We've still got 3 weeks left until the trade deadline, so we may see that shake out in that time, but it's clear that no one has felt like they needed to, go and get Chris Paul and buy in and have that real like veteran presence on their roster. It's clear the Clippers haven't really needed that, and if anything, guys have actually just like stepped up in the absence of Chris Paul. Not to say that Chris Paul was like shoes that needed to be filled or whatever, but more just like if Chris Paul was putting a mental strain on the roster, then the mentality of guys has been better since. Like we've all seen the way that Kawhi Leonard has locked in. We've seen the way that James is like handling being, the main playmaker in the team as he was doing for so much of last season. Like even though the efficiency numbers for James have dropped, 'cause I was just looking a little bit deeper into the sort of player stats there. Like even though the efficiency numbers have kind of dropped for James, like you wouldn't say that the eye test suggests that, and like his on-court leadership has been there for the whole time. So all these things that were kind of linked to Chris Paul's role in the team in terms of that leadership, in terms of like stars feeling comfortable being stars. And by the way, Kawhi was apparently one of the guys who was like kind of rooting for Chris on the roster too, and like wasn't wasn't exactly sent sort of scrapping for him to be sent home. John Collins was another one who like pretty sure he did an interview at the training camp around the time of the NBA Cup where he was saying that he liked Chris and got on with him. And then as you mentioned, like I'm pleased you did because we hadn't really spoke about him yet. But John Collins' numbers since we last recorded are incredible, like 64% from three on basically nearly four attempts a night. It's like just unbelievable in terms of efficiency turnaround from John Collins. So you're seeing those poor numbers that he had at the start of the season like really turn around, I guess, in a way that you kind of expect if you looked at the whole picture of John Collins now for the shooting numbers that you saw from last season. Ivica Zubac is another one who has, stepped up. You'd have to say in the absence of again, not saying it is in the absence of Chris Paul, but definitely in terms of like leadership. And his numbers have fallen, by the way, Zubac is from, what he was putting up in terms of points at the start of the season. His numbers have gone from 16 to 11.4. But yeah, I would argue that he's, being more clever in the way he's defending and feeling like he's more a part of the defensive scheme for the Clippers in recent games. And obviously there was that bit of time that he missed within that spell too in terms of injury. So it just feels like things have got like way more positive around the Clippers and the culture has been way more positive. And similar to you, like I don't want to, weigh loads of that on Chris Paul because I don't think that is necessarily fair to weigh on Chris
Yeah.
Paul. It just basically means that, as I said before, if Lawrence Frank was sat here and was like, well, the culture has improved and we thought that pulling that plug out would improve the culture, then like you couldn't really argue against it because guys are just stepping up to the plate. That next man up mentality that you referenced has absolutely been there, and we're seeing buy-in from basically top to bottom of the roster now. Even that spell where Zubac was out and Brook Lopez hit like 30 points in one night. Like we've just seen some crazy things happen the past few weeks of guys that if we hadn't necessarily written them off, then we were pretty close to just being like, oh, just trade them away. Like everyone's expendable. Now I'm back to the point where I'm like, oh, I can kind of actually see like a rough core to this team that you can build to in the future, beyond next season, beyond 2027 when all the money goes off the books. If James and Kawhi are to return next season, and you end up kind of at a point where like I still don't know if I want James and Kawhi to come back next season. Like if there's a way to get out of that and start to build the future now, I'd kind of like to see it. But if they were to, like, I maybe wouldn't frown at it too much, basically, as long as you could find a way to promise me that next season won't just start in the same way that this one did.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think like we obviously there were those concerns earlier in the year that maybe the team wasn't as deep as we had thought. But I think we've seen performances out of mostly everyone on that bench unit that I think like it's a solid bench. Maybe it could need some upgrading, and I know we're not far away from the trade deadline. I think it's the 5th of February, so it's coming up quickly. It's only 2 weeks away, so be interested to see if there are any moves the Clippers may be interested in, just to add like a bit more firepower to the bench. Because whilst yeah, I hear your points on Brook Lopez, and I think he's been playing a lot better. I think maybe that like offensive consistency hasn't always been there. But defensively, like he's been stepping up perfectly. Obviously, when Kawhi comes back, is there bench minutes for Jordan Miller now that he's sort of starting to find his rhythm? I think, as I've mentioned, like Kobe Sanders is steady hands, but again, like not too reliable for like big offensive numbers. And I think it would be great like if the Clippers could find a guard or somebody that can come off the bench and put up big numbers, or can be a bit of more of a defensive threat. And again, I don't know who they're looking at. I've not seen many rumors. I don't know if you have, but I think the main one that I've consistently seen is maybe moving off that bogey contract. I think also things that they've got to bear in mind is the amount of games they're allowed to play some of their two-way guys like Kobe Sanders. And like, again, I don't know what he is up to at this point, but these are things that the team are probably going to be considering. And I'm interested to see if they do make a move, because it looked like previously that they would have to make a move to make anything happen. They haven't. They've been more reliant on their young guys, and obviously they've got themselves in a position. I'd love to see them try and consolidate that as much as possible, and if that's by trying to reshuffle the deck slightly, not too much that it's going to throw anything off. But if there is any way we can get more talented without having to give up significant draft capital, like I really don't want to see the team throw any first round picks at anybody. But seconds, I think the team can part with over the next few years. Like more than happy to see it. I think I've maybe seen Keon Ellis name floated around. I don't know if that's the kind of guy that we want to go for. I think he's a decent player, and for a bench option like that could be one the Clippers could be interested in. But I'll definitely be excited to see the Clippers continue to give some of the young guys the minutes that they've been getting, because it's clear as day that the more opportunities they get, the more they're developing and they're becoming players that are going to be really, really valuable going forward. And like I said, I've been a massive fan of Jordan Miller and his performance recently, Kobe Sanders, and even Yannick Niederhauser is someone that we've been able to rely upon when Zoo has been out, or yeah, Brooke is maybe not as available. So keen that continues as much as possible. But like I said, 2 weeks away. Will the Clippers make a move? I don't know if you've been reading anything, Josh, that you want to share, or if you've got any thoughts on who we could bring in, or maybe a slight trade just to, like I said, consolidate where the team are, maybe help project them forward and start looking outside of just the play-in, because I know that, like you touched on at the start of the pod, Tyler Lue clearly has goals to continue this even further.
Yeah, it's hard to say really, because like you look at the sort of the payroll as it's constructed at the moment, and the Clippers of course signed Patrick Baldwin Jr. to a 10-day last week, and I read that tweet from Law Murray. I don't know if you caught this, James, but he was basically saying that Baldwin would give them 5 games, so it means that they could continue to play Kobe Sanders and Jordan Miller without the complications of worrying about two-way games and things like that, because I know we're getting to the sort of latter stage of the amount of two-way games that Kobe Sanders and Jordan Miller could have played at this point. So you'd imagine that
Mm.
maybe there's a chance that Patrick Baldwin Jr. gets extended for another 10 days, and then that takes them close towards the trade deadline. It just gives the Clippers that ultimate flexibility, because he effectively becomes like a standard contract on the roster. Means they can have 3 two-way guys. Of course, we've seen they picked up Ty Washington over AJ Dennis in the past few weeks too. So clearly just having a bit of a look in terms of what they think they need to see on the roster. And I think I agree with you. Like it feels like Bogey is maybe the most likely to get guy to get moved, in terms of, it feels like there's just no way we can get Bogey clearly through these injury issues, and he's not able to contribute, and he takes up for what is a relatively small payroll, really, a big proportion of quite small payroll. So, is there a clever way you can use that contract? I've not really given myself a chance to go and like do the full ESPN trade machine or anything like that, or be
Yeah.
on Bleacher Report. 'Cause I know they love to do all those articles with like realistic trade targets for each NBA team. But I'd be interested to see like who was on those things for the Clippers because, as you say, like maybe a little bit of a lift in terms of bench score, and I wouldn't mind seeing another 3-and-D guy come in necessarily because it feels like the Clippers are able to get the odd big night from 3-and-D guys. We've seen it with Nicholas Batum, we've seen it with Derek Jones Jr. Like the Clippers do just find a way to get the most out of those guys on kind of any given night. And you wonder if the Clippers were to be able to pick someone up like that, would that be the thing that can just tip them over the edge or continue them on this sort of streak of being a good team? Like all the big trade targets that it feels like are out there, I just don't necessarily see the Clippers as like being connected to them in any
No.
way, really. Like I don't see the Clippers making that big swing. I think if there's anything doing, it will just be something around the edges. And I'm even looking at like, the sort of top guys on the trade board there, and it doesn't feel like any of them are going to be in contention or like the Clippers are going to be interested in any of them. So you imagine the Clippers will just be like settling for kind of their lot in some senses. It doesn't mean that I don't think they'll make like retooling moves around the deadline. Again, it's just hard to say in the general landscape like who and what that will be. And I don't even know if I have any ideas that initially spring to mind in terms of like, oh, it should be that guy because that money matches up with Bogdanovic's. But yeah, it feels like maybe Bogey is the realistic move that gets you off, and then just kind of work with what you've got from there. Derek Jones Jr. will come back.
Yeah.
You've basically got like buy-in from the rest of the guys that you'd need. Maybe Brook Lopez is the other one that you'd look at trading away. Of course, there's the Chris Paul contract that you'd look at trading away. The Clippers can't aggregate salaries in terms of like bringing in fewer players for aggregating salaries, so it couldn't be a trade that like sees all those guys leave at once unless we were to get three players in that kind of match up to the salaries. But they're the three that I could see being on the trade block for the Clippers. Of course, it goes without saying that Chris Paul is. The Clippers, which you said, they'll help him
Hmm.
find a new team and stuff. But yeah, like who that will be, I've kind of got like a prototype of that player in mind, but not necessarily that player. I don't know about you.
Yeah, again, I'm not really sure either. I think the only name that I've seen linked to the Clippers recently is Keon Ellis, and there being some trade discussions. And I think if that could be the swap, like I'd be happy with that. Like, not the biggest fan of Keon Ellis, but like a career 41.5% shooter. That speaks to me as just reliability, and the Clippers could just do with more than that, which is not obviously what they're currently getting with Bogey. And I think he's also a guy who has an impact on the defensive side of the ball as well, and I think is clearly gettable considering the amount of minutes that he's playing at the moment. Obviously, the fact where the Kings are, and yeah, I just think it could be a great move for the Clippers to make. Could we see something else happen further over the next few weeks? I'm not sure. I don't know who that could be, but I think it's just potentially around like trying to shore up the future as well, because as we know, there's a lot of money coming off the books at the end of this season. And whilst the Clippers have somehow made this season potentially mean something again by going on this streak, and could potentially get even better if they can push for a top six seed. Yeah, it's always a possibility that potentially that sort of first 24, 25 games dug the Clippers a big hole, and you sort of have to have that long-term view as well. I think the Clippers are committed to the next like couple of seasons of just having as much money off the books, and if the move is to improve that further by getting rid of Bogey, then I think, like you mentioned, the Clippers clearly have firepower in their sort of young personnel in terms of Jordan Miller and Kobe Sanders, and even Cam Christie, right? Like I think he is due an opportunity and has had it probably less consistently than some of the other names we've spoken about, but clearly can perform, and I think only recently come off like a 16-point night. So that's another guy that could easily step up if Bogey's minutes became available. And even then, Bogey hasn't really been playing a whole lot. So, that's just another guy that the Clippers can turn to if they don't find anybody to get a trade. Maybe they just dump him somewhere and move on. And I think that could be the move they make. I don't think they need that big hitter, like you said, and I don't think they can afford it. So I think we should continue rolling what they got. Things are looking good now. If they can consolidate that, brilliant. But the Clippers' schedule coming up is not too bad either. It's 22nd out of 30 in terms of strength of schedule. So they've got some tough games coming up. Obviously, the next game is against the Lakers, but it's by far not the toughest record considering there's been a lot of sentiment online that the Clippers have only played like sort of below 500 teams. That is absolutely not the case. Like the Clippers have like a fair schedule going forward, and I wouldn't be surprised if they split the next 39 games and then end up in the play-in, which would be perfect considering where the Clippers have gone. If this is the big stretch, then cool. Like I absolutely don't mind the Clippers going like 500 over the next 39 games. Like that is to me would be a perfect end to the season. Obviously, would be difficult to think about a Clippers season where it's not a winning season. It's probably will be the first season under 500. So it'd be brilliant if they can get that. But yeah, I think my real point is just like the games to come are very winnable. So let's just continue this streak and I hope that us returning to the podcast, Josh, is not going to do anything. I'm touching wood right now. I'm not going to be blamed for this. And yeah, I think the Clippers will do us just fine. And the View from the Clipper podcast reputation will hold as a result of the Clippers just playing better basketball.
I love this. This all feels way more optimistic than how we ended 2025. So we'll end on this
Yeah,
positive note from me and James. A slightly more streamlined episode from us today. But as we say, just getting back into the swing of things. It may be me in the hosting chair at times, and maybe James in the hosting chair at times. You'll know what to
yeah.
expect. That it's going to be flexible here on the View from the Clipper. And we hope that the Clippers stay flexible ahead of the trade deadline because who knows who could be popping up Clippers. There may be some buyout targets even that you can get your hands on those cheap minimum deals. So we'll be trusting Larry Fingers, even though a couple of weeks ago I definitely wasn't trusting Larry Fingers. But we'll put all our trust and all our faith back in his hands again and see if he can bring some goodness for the Clippers in the next few weeks. But James, thanks as always for being a part of the podcast, for hosting this on Clippers UK. It's always an honor to be back in the seat with you. Hoping the Clippers can continue to win games over the coming weeks, and that we'll hopefully be back next week with us anyway to talk through what's happened the next few weeks. A win over the Lakers would be massively nice. Kawhi Leonard returning would be massively nice. Keep it locked until then. Go Clips, go.